Good morning and welcome to the February 16, 2012 Academic Advising Seminar. Our topic today is graduation requirements, and we are slowly winding down the number of advising sessions that are remaining. In March, we're going to have Communicating with Your Advisees as our next session, and our final session will be April 12th, where we'll be creating your own academic advising shell in Blackboard. Today, our presenters are Anne Marie Gillespie, Barb Hampel, and Amy Truong, and I think you're going to enjoy hearing more about graduation requirements.
I know, because everybody wants to know more about graduation requirements. You can tell, right? Look at this overwhelming crowd. I'm just so excited. I know. Ooh, crickets. All right, so we knew that people were going to be eating at the very beginning. So as you eat, we're going to start off with the baby steps so that you can go ahead and you can eat, and I can talk at the same time, and then you can kind of poke around at the computer because I don't want to interfere with the food. All right, so we planned it this way. All right, so because I know that you probably have to get back to class or to whatever. So I was aware of this. And then towards the end, after everybody's had an opportunity to eat, that's when we're definitely going to get very interactive and very hands-on with the technology. All right, so we are aware. The beginning is going to be more talky so that you can eat. What we do need you to do, though, so there will be a little bit of technology, at some point is to log on to MyFSU. All the computers should have been set so that you're no longer at the library main page, and you'll be able to access MyFSU. And then we're going to be looking at Gen Ed, and we're going to be looking at some of the different program requirements and the different university requirements and graduation requirements. So we're going to start, and we're going to start building, and then we're going to put it all together in terms of what all you can do. And we have lots of handouts for you because I think that it's important for you to be able to take things back to your offices, because I know that we're going to give you a lot of information. So lots of information for you to have today. Okay. Whoops. I know, it's exciting, right? So as you log into MyFSU, as you eat, as you go along, one of the first things that we're going to talk about and that we're going to look at is Gen Ed. And I know that Gen Ed becomes one of our favorite sorts of things, right? Come on. It's a little bit interactive. You can chew and nod at the same time. But Gen Ed also becomes one of those complicating factors because it is so incredibly important that when we're looking at Gen Ed, and that when we're looking at what many of the requirements are, is that whether you are completing an associate's, whether you are completing a bachelor's degree, you have those particular requirements that your programs have to complete. And are these the complete Gen Ed? Oh, these are just the core matrices. Okay, so as we're looking at the Gen Eds, how often are you paying attention as you're doing your advising? All the time? You feel really confident and comfortable with your Gen Ed knowledge? So that when I say with social awareness, you can tell me right off the top of your head. See, I lied to you already, didn't I? Because I'm going to be asking you questions while you're chewing. That if I ask you about social awareness, you can tell me the rules about social awareness, and you can tell me the rules about culturals, and you can tell me the rules about all of these different sorts of things, right? No? Okay. So, yeah, you're like, yeah, just leave us alone. Let us eat like you promised. And so that's what we're going to do, is we're going to look at the requirements by degree. Now, in your colleges, I know that criminal justice has both the associate's degree and has the bachelor's degree. What college are you at? Technology. So you have the same sort of thing. And Sharon, does anybody graduate out of your associate's degree? Yeah, you do have associate's degree. Yes. Okay, so let's look at the associate's degrees first. And when we're looking at the Associate of Science degrees, you're going to see that we have the communication that they have to take care of. And if you haven't been out on the Gen Ed website, please make sure that you do go out there. All right, because these rules are going to be a little bit different for each of our different degrees. Yes?
I didn't get exactly that page you're on.
Okay. What I want you to do is, we're going to go back to the home page. And right here where it says academics, you're going to come down and it's going to say general education. And where it says general education, you're going to see requirements by degree. And on the side where it says requirements by degree, we have the Bachelor of Science, we have the Associate of Arts and Associate of Science, and the Associate of Applied Science. Okay?
When I go on the academic advising guide,
Mm-hmm.
and I hit Gen Ed, it doesn't take me here.
It doesn't take you here. Okay.
I'll look into that.
All right. So we've given Deb homework. Awesome. I love that. Okay. So with the communication competence, when we're looking at this, this one is very, very similar to our bachelor's degree. What's different about it is it doesn't have the 300 level. Okay, it doesn't have the 300 level in terms of what that requirement is. But when you're working with that student initially, if they're planning on graduating and you're creating that plan for that student, you have to make sure that you're doing that pre-planning with that student. Whether it's a WIC class, and I'll talk about those more in just a second, or it's one of our 321, 311, 325, 323 classes that we have. But these associate credits, they still have to have that English 1 and 2, those lower level English classes, and they still have to have that comm class, okay, whatever comm class it is that they have to have. Now sometimes, especially when they're bouncing between colleges, sometimes that comm class, especially, and we see this in criminal justice because a lot of your students want to double major with our students. Sometimes making those choices becomes a little bit problematic. And so having conversations with your student about what they want to do and if they're going to be adding extra degrees becomes really important with that student, especially long-term planning. It goes on looking at the scientific understanding. Now what's nice about the associate degrees, especially with graduation, and if they're planning on being a 2+2, is with that associate's degree, they're already going to take care of their bachelor requirements, okay? Because for their associates, they will have completed what they need to complete for their bachelor's degree, all right? So 2 things are taken care of right there, and they can bounce up. Quantitative. Now, the quantitative requirements for most of the colleges, our college is unique in the College of Arts and Sciences. Our students are required to have Math 115. Your college may be different. The university requirement, though, for an associate's degree is Math 110. So if a student gets the Math 110, the student, according to the university, has completed what they need for general education. All right? And they can meet a quantitative requirement based on all of these different sorts of scores that come in. So when you're signing off on an associate's degree, in terms of their quantitative general education, all of these come into play when we start looking at associate's degrees. All right, so you can see that there's a wide variety of different things that we look at. For their cultural enrichment, they have to have 3. Cultural enrichment, 1 has to be 200 level or higher, which is the same as with our bachelor's degrees. Okay, so that has them right on track there. And then with their social awareness, they have to have 9. 2 different subject areas and the social foundations, which is the same as with our bachelor's degree. Now, I cannot tell you the number of times when I do a graduation application for our students who are graduating where this 200 level or higher, this difference where where the students are not necessarily getting the different subject areas. That different subject area is very, very important. They can't take all psychology. They can't take all sociology. They can't take all Thank you, political science. I'm like, what are those other socials? Because it's usually the psychology and the sociology that they're taking. They have to take one different one in order to be able to graduate. And you may be looking at the student going, oh, right, look at all these classes. But you know what? They still can't graduate. They have to have it according to the general education requirement for the associate's and for the bachelor's degree. And then when we look at the bachelor's, one of the things that comes on that's a little bit different about these, we have a difference in terms of our, if you back up there, we have a difference in terms of our communication. We have the 300 level for the communication that they have to take. Now what's different is in College of Education is College of Education allows you, go ahead and hand that out too. College of Education allows you to choose the WIC classes. And so with the writing intensive classes, the students have to take 3 of those WIC classes. Those writing intensive classes equal, or excuse me, 3 WIC or, yeah, no, you guys are at 3 WIC, right? And then the English 311, 321, 323, or 325. Those all equal one another. So when, for instance, one of your students takes their 3 WIC classes and then wants to come over to our psychology class and our psychology program and major in that, we're having some issues because sometimes our psychology faculty want that student to take our requirement. And we're having discussions with them saying, no, this equals this. And part of it was we need to be fair to these students because they've met the requirement. And so whether it's our students coming to CJ or CJ students coming to here, it becomes that conversation because we're adding an additional $1,000 onto these students. You know, and so we have to look at that in terms of graduation requirements. We also have a difference in terms of our quantitative skills. At the very least, a student has to have that Math 115 or higher. If they have a 24 on their ACT, or if they have a 560 on their SAT, they have completed it according to the institution. Now, if you have a student who is planning on going to graduate school, and this becomes one of those discussions you have to have with that student, you may want to discuss with them what those future plans are, because not having the math may negatively impact them when depending on their graduate school focus. Okay, and so that might be that discussion about you might want to take it anyway because it can help you on down the road. All right. Cultural is still the same, social is still the same, but then we have to add in this global. This global consciousness becomes a part of the cultural and the social. Students they're double dipping with those. It's really important that when you're doing your early on advising for graduation that the student has met their global component. Most of your programs are set up so that they do. Every now and again a student slips through and they've got to have it. And they've got to have the race, ethnicity, and gender. But the nice part is once they've met their social foundations course, like their Psych 150 or their Social 121, they've already taken care of that with the race, ethnicity, and gender courses. But you can always come back here and you can double check in terms of what it is that they need. You can also, oops, I guess I don't have to back all the way out, come to the general education sortable list. How many of you have played with this yet? One? Two-ish? Not with enthusiasm, I see. Okay, this is going to become your new best friend. This is where you can find all of the Gen Ed courses that have been approved.
How we got there again?
We are on the Gen Ed page, And up at the very top, it says General Education Courses Sortable List. And you click on that slowly. I don't know why it's... And what this does is it gives you the listing help. It'll let you know the legend, the cultural, the global, the race, the science. Takes you back to the requirements by degree. So it's a nice handy dandy little, here you go. If you really care about the learning outcome areas, it'll give you that too. Lots of reading for you. But what's nice is this pulls directly from the Banner system. So as our catalog is updated, this is updating as well. And so when curricular changes go through, this is going through. So if you want to be able to find a cultural, that might be a cultural global, you can click on it. So as you go down, what you can see is like African American art history is going to be both a cultural and a race, ethnicity, and gender. If I want to find cross-cultural communication, it's going to be both. As you can see with this one that's open, there's no prerequisites. This is typically when it's offered, and it also tells me, gives me that information that I need to have about it. All right, so you're going to have what it is that you need to know based on the sortable list. Okay, so when we start looking at the graduation requirements, one of the things, though, that this will also do for you is it will also tell you what courses are not general education requirements. Because quite often when I'm doing graduation audits, people will send in courses that they will have decided are gen eds. And they will say, well, it says history somewhere in the title, or it says art somewhere in the title, so therefore it is now general education. Well, if it hasn't been approved by the curriculum committee, or if it hasn't been approved by one of our departments as being general education, or the general education committee, which I also happen to be on, it's not gen ed. So you can't make up gen ed, even though you may want to. And depending on who's doing it, College of Education, Criminal Justice, Mary's going to be leaving. So whoever comes in, you know, may be very, very strict in their interpretation of it. You need to pay very, very particular attention to that when you start looking at these. So it's very important when we're looking at this. Now, what I had Amy and Barb hand out is I gave you our Bachelor of Arts template because I wanted to find something that would at least give you a sense in terms of how we lay out our gen ed. And I looked at all of your check sheets, and yours are very, very similar. And usually following your check sheets are going to help. Your paper check sheets are going to help. Make sure if you're still using paper and you're not using your My Degree, that you're going to be able to just go through and you're going to be able to use your My Degree. You're going to be able to go through. You're going to have that information, and that you're double checking all of that. I know that many of yours are a little bit more prescriptive than ours. Arts and Sciences tends to be very loosey-goosey. Yours, but it's a nice thing to be able to go through. So when you're done, that graduation requirement is finished. It's complete. When we start looking in terms of program requirements, and we're looking at the major requirements as well, and we're looking at and if you flip the other side over, I know that on your major requirements and your directed elective requirements and your portfolios, incompletes and non-NGRs, not gradeds, and your substitution and waivers, the same thing is going to be going on. You're going to be going through, and you're going to be making sure as you're going through that these students are completing what it is that they need to be completing. Mainly because as we look to see how each of the colleges, each of the colleges does their processes, you all do your processes just a little bit differently. And that's one of the things that what I did is I tried to see how everybody does their processes for graduation. And in terms of where that information is coming from. In engineering technology, I know you're using both the My Degree as your check sheet as well as the paper check sheet, depending on what level you're at. And I know that you're using both now. Okay. Because Mary sent me just your paper ones and didn't tell me about the... Oh, you're now doing the online, the My Degree? Okay. And so it becomes really important to make sure that all of these are going through and that they're being checked off, so when it comes time for graduation and the graduation clearance, that they're all complete, okay, as best as you possibly can, because when you sign off on those become that contract that you're making with the student. So as soon as you sign off on that grad audit, it is pretty much a contract. Hey, I've done this grad clearance, I've looked at this, and here it is. It's being double checked by the dean's office, and when the dean's office signs off on it, that's yet another way that we're looking at it in terms of, all right, we've double checked this, and it's becoming an even firmer contract with that student in terms of this is what it is that we're doing in order to be able to complete that, which is why knowing what those requirements are is so very, very important. Knowing what they have in terms of their portfolios and their field experiences becomes so very, very important. And they're incomplete. And Barb's going to talk a little bit more about incompletes in just a few seconds, and the not gradeds. And the substitutions and waivers. Knowing what those substitution and waivers are. Oh, I like how it's split. The substitutions and waivers are from the very beginning. And I'm going to assume that all of you are working with those and can make those decisions for your program.
As far as waiver
deviations from it.
classes.
For the different classes, yes, but you know?
I don't have any students.
You don't have any students yet? Okay. And when you did, do you have the authority to do that? Do all your faculty advisors have that authority to do the deviations, or is it just like a program coordinator?
Yeah, we submit the deviation recommendation that's signed by the higher up.
Okay, so it goes through. Okay, so it's pretty much the same process in all of the colleges. Yeah, and how about over in engineering technology? Same thing. Yep. Yeah, and that's one of the things. And as My Degree continues to become, and Amy will talk about that more, the exceptions are going to be going in to the My Degree, and we're going to be able to track those more easily. And so keeping track of them and getting them done early. Because let's say that you agree to something with a student, and then you go on sabbatical, or you haven't put it in writing for whatever reason. And then the student's ready to graduate, and it's not in writing, but they're going, really, honestly, truly, they told me I could do this. Well, you know, if it's not in writing, then it's not fair to that student. And it's all about student fairness, and that's really what it is that we're trying to do, and to make sure that that process is fair. We also work to make sure that when we're working with our students, that we're going through with the university requirements. Now, in terms of residency requirements, what is the residency requirement to graduate from Ferris State with an associate's degree? Okay, 15 credits. They can transfer in, and they only need 15 credits to earn an associate's degree here. Okay, so a bachelor's degree, residency requirement.
30.
Awesome, look at that, yeah. 30 credits is all that they need. That's their residency requirement. If they don't have it, I know it's little, but if they don't have it, they don't graduate. So they do have to have that much in order to be able to graduate from Ferris with that. And so one of the things that we do use is we use this to kind of keep on track as we're going through. Well, I use this. Barb made me. And I want you to make sure that you're going through this. But part of what your job is you're doing your grad audits, is you need to look to see if they have incompletes. What happens to an incomplete that isn't completed? What?
Goes to an F.
Goes to an F. How long does that take?
Semester?
Semester? Can you ever not have it go to an F?
Yes.
When?
When you ask permission?
Yep. Please, please, please. Yeah, exactly. But sometimes what happens is if it's extended it doesn't automatically roll to the F. And that's one of those things that you have to look at when you're doing that graduation audit. Did it not roll because it wasn't an automatic roll to begin with? Same thing when we start looking in terms of those repeated courses, because we have the exclusions and we have the inclusions. So when you see that E, it's an exclusion. It's no longer being computed into the grade point. The inclusion, that's the one that you want to be looking at. Okay, so you can just more or less ignore those E's that are going along in there. When we're looking at the under 100 level courses, what do we think about those when we're trying to do a graduation audit?
They don't count.
They don't count, absolutely. But what ends up happening at the very bottom when you're looking at that transcript? Yeah, they add up. So what you have to do is you have to manually take them out when you're doing that graduation audit. Why they still go into the earned hours, I don't know. And that's the other thing, is you need to be focused on earned hours. Not attempted hours, not GPA hours, but make sure you're looking at the earned hours that that particular student has. The 40 credits at 300 and 400 level or above, the number of times that I have students who can't graduate because of their lack of hours. Many of your programs already have those built in, but students sometimes don't take the credits. They don't take the hours. We have faculty members or advisors who don't count right. So yeah, I know, it happens. And or what they'll do is they'll count the exclusion and inclusion twice. And so it becomes really important that as you're going through these, because a student can't graduate if they don't have those hours, and then they end up being here longer as a result of that. All right, so it becomes one of those things that we have to be very, very careful with. And then the GPA requirements, your majors and your minors. Thank goodness I don't have anybody from secondary ed here or elementary ed, because I wasn't going to have to explain that. I think all of you have the 2.0 though, right, for your requirements, 2.0. And that becomes very, very important, is looking at that, that primary thing.
Anne Marie is handing out the workflow for grade changes. Has everybody done a grade change, or do we know what we're talking about here? Or
Not on mine, Barb.
oh, what do I?
Jump out.
Oh,
Take control, Barb.
well, sorry, I'm not a public speaker, but I do have my notes here, and I do know the subject area. Anyway, when a faculty performs a grade change and it gets approved by the department head or whatever mechanism you have set up for approval processes, that grade change does show in Banner immediately. It is live. It is calculated. So that's one thing to remember. A faculty, and this is explained in the handout, only courses that the faculty is assigned to will be an option to change a grade for a student. So you'd enter the student's ID, and then, because you're already logged into MyFSU, only students who you have control of in a class will come up. So those classes are going to be in the past year. Anything older than that will not show up. Anything prior to a year, or older than a year, let's say, you do have to have a written reason to the Vice President of Academic Affairs why it's so old that you're changing this grade. And that has to be signed by your dean. That's the process for that. The timeliness of doing grade changes, the one new kind of a deadline we have is when a student graduates, we have a 6 weeks window to verify their degree completions. So if there is a grade change for that reason, we need it done in this 6 week window, or the student's graduation will be held to the next cycle. That's very new from the records office. And
Yeah, and it's very, very important. So not only held to the next cycle, so what that means is if they are a fall graduate, it means that they won't graduate until spring. So if they're not in that 6-week window.
A couple other things. An incomplete can be continued. It's not an option in the electronic workflow process. You have to do a continuing incomplete on paper. And then anytime you do a grade change where there's an error message, and one common one we see is where the student doesn't have a valid email, it will not allow you to process that, and those would have to be also done on paper like the old way. I'm not sure if that will ever get resolved because supposedly every student has an email address. So it's just a little glitch that they found that might make you do it on paper rather than electronically. I think that's all I had on grade changes. We can go into the next one, talking about the new the application, the online application. This is very new. The College of Allied Health Sciences was the pilot for the fall semester, and they had a very good success rate with their students. Everybody did what they were supposed to in the end, and it worked well. The electronic application, what we're handing out are just the screenshots of what the student will see when they go online to apply for graduation. It does show up in the student's MyFSU menu as an option. At the time when they have earned enough hours to graduate, I think it's 86 hours or something for a bachelor degree. Once they have that hour number accumulated, this will be an option for them. Prior to that, it won't even show up on their menu, on the student's MyFSU menu. The student must be in the correct major, and they must be in the correct minor and certificate program, because when the student applies for graduation, all that is going to come up to be available to them is the programs they are in. I'm not sure if other colleges have a problem, but just for an example, in the College of Arts and Sciences, a student might be in the BS Biology in a pre-medicine track. But come graduation time, for whatever reason, they end up doing just a general biology major, BS Biology, without the concentration. But they were never really in that major. So we have to do a program change effective that semester with a notation for graduation, so it will become an option for them to apply for it. Because otherwise, when they go to apply, it'll say pre-med. Well, that's not what they're really doing. Another part of the new online graduation application is this is going to be just super, super good for the records office. The problem I can see maybe happening is, so the student applies for graduation, but they really haven't got the audit piece together. So we're working on ways to connect those. There's going to be a lot of reports available, and so I can see us maybe doing some chasing down of students to get their audit in. Yes, you've applied for graduation, but we don't have an audit for you with, courses applied to your degree. So it's just really new yet. And for summer 2012 and fall, this is going to go live in March. March 5th is the go live date for students to apply for graduation with the online system. So, yes.
So will that be like a link in the self-serve banner?
Yes.
When we pull them up, we'll see.
The students will pull it up. I'm not sure if you would know if they've applied so much, but the student will go in, and as those screenshots, it's where they're going to mail their diploma, how their name will be, and all that. And they must apply for every major or minor or certificate. It's a separate application. I'm sorry? It just goes to the records office. It's kind of in banner.
Okay, so
And so the dean's offices, the graduation coordinators, will probably be retrieving lists off reports and then matching. Again, we're just not sure how this is going to work so much, but Allied Health said it worked well with the way they do things. So, did somebody else have a question?
They want to know if it also impacted graduate programs.
I think it's going to be everybody. I think everybody who's in a major will have this.
There might be some tweaks down the line because none of the graduate programs were consulted. So there's different.
Well, I know the professional programs, pharmacy and optometry, will be in it, and I just assume the other ones. We've got a meeting on the 28th, and we're going to be learning all the rest of the pieces to it.
Don't forget graduate education coordinator.
Okay, who is Terry, or who is your
I'm the
colleague?
graduate education coordinator for the university.
Oh, well then. Okay. Elise Gramza would be the contact person to make sure your programs are included, I guess, or?
Well,
We're just
with
the
the
bearer
new
of
graduate
bad news.
office starting, that's what I'm saying, we're working on admissions now, we're not on clearances yet. So, but it would be interesting to sit in on that to find out, what special, arrangements are being made because the graduate programs have different requirements.
But they're still applying for graduation, is that correct? I mean, at some point,
Yeah.
or so all this electronic thing is applying for graduation. It really is not tied to an audit or anything. So that's kind of the piece.
Aren't there's some limitations though, if a student and this is filtering down, and I don't know what the limitations are.
Okay.
What happens if a student applies for graduation but then is not ready to walk that semester? And how does that then affect them when they change semesters?
Well, that's what we're going to be doing, is chasing down these applicants and getting their audit. There are some forms in Internet Native Banner that the dean's offices will have, access to and update capability, where we're going to say there's different codes where they have cleared, where they need to see somebody, and at the end of the graduation cycle, when we've done a final audit, we will actually check them as degree awarded, and then the records office runs the diplomas and the transcripts and everything in just seconds where it took days before. Excuse me.
This is not an academic affairs push. This was a push that came from student affairs, and we were informed that this was occurring, and it's separate from our graduation clearances. And there are the same concerns that you're expressing for the undergraduate programs, and things are there are the same concerns that you are expressing from the undergraduate programs, and we don't know how it's going to work. I mean, Allied Health is very lockstep in the way that they do things, and when they're completed with their curriculum, the program coordinators hand it to the students and say, here, you're all done. That's not what happens in the other colleges, and that's why we're very concerned about what's going to happen in the other programs. So we have no idea what's going to happen. They wanted things to be able to be simpler for records and for commencement. So to answer your question, we don't know.
I like that question.
Yeah.
The answer.
Yeah,
I
it's
wish I could
just.
say, yeah, we were all part of it, but we were not.
So, and then the other big challenge is actually getting the message out to the students to let them know that this online application is available and for them to do it. Now, in our college, we actually have quite a few applications for summer on file and maybe 10 or 12 for fall 2012. So we're going to be contacting those students to tell them they must also apply online and let them, and then we'll have to follow up to make sure they do. So I apologize, but it's just too new to to have a lot of reference and a lot of,
So when does
information.
it start?
The system is going to go live March 5th. The application for students to apply for graduation will be live on March 5th.
Is that for spring or is that
For spring and fall. Oh, excuse me, summer and fall. Spring is not in that mix. Thank
I have to go back and get all this.
thank goodness. And I think that kind of talks about.
Commencement. Oh, sorry.
So we'll go on to. No, I'm done. Oh, the commencement deadlines. With the online application, they're going to be able to generate a lot of things like downloading for the commencement book. So the biggest application deadline we have is 12 weeks prior to any graduation ceremony for the students who want to participate in commencement. The 12 weeks is the window they gave us for, printing the book. And anyone after that, they can certainly participate in commencement, but their name might not be in the book after that 12-week date prior to a ceremony. So your summer grads really have to plan ahead as usual. They have to be on top of the game if they want to participate in the spring commencement. And then to go kind of hand in hand with this grade change, the 6-week window after the commencement, after grades are due, is when this cutoff is for awarding or posting the student's degree to their transcripts for that cycle. Otherwise, it'll be held to the next cycle. Thank you.
Yeah. So we're going to assume that you're very comfortable, excuse me, with your paper audits. And so Amy, because we just love my degree, right?
Did I do
Of course you do. You love it. So Amy, who happens to be our guru, and is a little irritated with me right now because she didn't realize the camera was ever going to focus on her. I promised her it was not. I lied through my teeth to get her over here. I know, shame on me, but sometimes life sucks. Amy,
That's a nice approach.
I know, it's so professional. Amy is
I do have to
going
stand over here, though.
She is our guru. I mean, you want to talk about somebody who knows my degree, and these have been actually updated for those of you who were here in October. So we continually are updating, and we're going to update one more time with some more fancy stuff that we came across with the Navigating My FSU and the Advisor Manual. So these are always in that state. So take it away, Amy, and I apologize.
Okay, so I'm assuming all of you have used My Degree or have played around in My Degree. And so when you first load My Degree, there's the worksheet, which would be the audit for the student. But now as My Degree is we're transitioning to My Degree, and there are some features on here which, with helping plan for graduation, is a great feature, which is the planner. This is a sample student that I have that has a plan that she created actually herself. Unfortunately, the screen is very small, so I'm going to try to shrink it a little bit so that we can see it better. So have you all used the planner function before? Okay. So basically, there's the option, the student has planned out her classes for graduation, and it's a really nice feature because you can make sure that you cover all the classes that are needed. She's actually triple majoring, so once you create a plan, you can click on Process New. Oops. You need to check all the terms and hit Process New.
Amy, you might want to slow down because if you're in Firefox, the pop-up blockers.
Oh, yes. And you have to make sure, yes, you turn off all your pop-up blockers.
Well, but Firefox won't let them turn them off. They have to go back in through IE.
Oh, and probably because of the restrictions here, but sometimes you don't just have it through the browser you're using itself. There's also, some people have different toolbars, like the Google toolbar, so you'll have to make sure you turn it off.
there's an error in my degree, who you contact? Just asking.
Meaning with the coursework that's shown, or?
And what it's showing is a required course that's been changed. And so it's showing that the student needs it, and
It's not as
it's been changed to a different course.
well. It also, you need to pay attention to the catalog term for the student, because let me go back to the worksheet here. Is that student supposed to be in that proper check sheet? See, for example, let me make this back to 100%. This student, she started her program in the 2010 catalog. So for the 2010 for her, you know, if the requirements are changed for 2011, then
Well, that's not, this is a class that's changed and it's the only option they have.
Okay.
So I was just asking, who do I contact to tell them that it's wrong?
your educational counselor for your college.
All right. Email it
Anne Marie, may I continue? Or okay, okay. So this student, like I said, she has a plan that she created for all her future terms, and then once you've selected those, which you can also, once this left side loads, it takes a minute because she has 3 majors. So yes. Okay. You can create a new plan by clicking up here in the drop down, adding a new plan, and then hitting load. But for her, she already has a plan, and so as you see, as I checked all of the terms and hit process new, then as you scroll on the left-hand side, you can see that everything that she has planned shows up on the left in blue, and that it's going to be completed. So it's kind of a way to double check. Like, for example, it shows that she still has 1 credit needed in scientific understanding, which she has fulfilled, but the course that she took, which is the SSCI, has 1 credit, and so it doesn't show up on here. But it's a good way to double check to make sure that they are taking the classes they need. And the other feature about it is, for example, if she wanted to throw one of these cultural enrichment electives in there, you can just click and drag it over, and it automatically pops it in, so that you're not mistyping for the student, you know, and putting HIST, and should be HISH, or mistyping the number of credit hours and not taking the right classes they need. The other really nice feature about this planner is you can help them schedule without having to go back into Internet Native, self-serve, by clicking on this more info on these classes. It pulls up all the classes that you typed in for that term, the course descriptions, prerequisites, and how many seats are open, and it's pretty live, you know, but obviously that was as of 1 minute ago, and so if people are filling in the seats, it's not going to be correct. But at least it's a general guide so that they can schedule off of here and see. It did show, it used to show the meeting dates and times, but apparently they have changed that. So you might still need to reference back to the self-serve and look up each class. The other thing is, at the very top, you can lock the plan. This is not locked, so she created this, the student created this, but let's say you want to create one for the student, then you can lock it so that, you know, you don't want them to make changes and select something else and say, oh no, you told me I could take this class, and have that kind of error. So you can lock it yourself and create a plan, but also have the students create the plan so that, you know, they can determine their workload and work with them together. And then at the very bottom, there's also plan notes. So you can type in plan, you know, going to take a class over the summer at GRCC or something like that, and those kinds of notes. And this is, you can save it, you can print it, so it's also nice features with this. The one thing that they're trying to look into fixing, though, is if a student does have a plan in there and they change their program, at the moment it is deleting the plan. So please make sure you print it off and put it in their file, because if they change their program and you spend all this time working on a plan, and even if they're switching from the associate to a bachelor's degree, it is wiping out their plan. So.
Interject.
Mhm.
When you develop the plan in Firefox, for me, it has never once saved. I have to do it in Internet Explorer, and then it will save.
Okay. So she said that she has problems with Firefox. I don't even use Firefox, so most of Ferris, they say that you can use Firefox, but I've noticed with a lot of even Internet Native Banner and stuff like that, to use Internet Explorer. I think that's your best option for my degree. I've noticed some issues with Chrome too, so make sure you work in Internet Explorer. Thank you for that. Now, for some students, most of the students now you'll be working with are students who have entered from fall 2010 and on. But let's say you are working with a student who is pre-fall 2010. Let me pull one up for you. Okay, so this student, if they entered before fall 2010's catalog, when they go to look at their worksheet, he's a 2007 student, all you'll see is the disclaimer, and then all of his courses drop down below because there's no worksheet that's loaded for any of those previous catalog years. So that would be a nice, what you need to do for that is go into the what if, and you have to use this loosely because if the curriculum has changed, then it's not going to be as correct, but at least it gives you some guideline for the program requirements for the student and that major. Yes, you go to the what if function. I'm sorry. You make sure you select the proper degree type. So he's a Bachelor of Science, and it shows up here what he was labeled as. Make sure you select the proper catalog year, which at this point is only 11-12 that you can select from. And then the major. You can do multiple majors too, but one limitation of this is you cannot do a BA and a BS or any other varying degree types. So as long as they're the same degree type, like both Bachelor of Sciences, you can use this and do the multiple options. You can do the minor. And this is also not just for the students for before fall 2010, but if they're thinking about changing their major, and they're meeting with you and they say, oh, I'm thinking about changing my major, how are my classes going to fit? Then that's what the what if is for. Once you've selected all the options that you'd like, you click the process what if, and it'll run it, or you can do save as PDF, which loads it in a very nice printable view form. The system is very slow today. It's only one major. So this loads and brings up a nice, clean, printable view of all the requirements and shows that he's all fulfilled everything that he needs to graduate. So, but of course, this isn't just, you can't take this word for word, as you in the back said, that there are some of these have errors, and you do need to bring any errors to the attention of your educational counselor. But at least this is a guideline and that you can work from. One other helpful option in here is the registration checklist. So if you go back to the worksheets tab, and in this drop down of the different format, you can select registration checklist. Let me go back to the student because he's done.
Will my degree show up as students graduated, or other than all the requirements are complete?
It will not. bring that person up. If you are in self-serve and you go to select the student from ID selection, it won't even open up My Degree for you. But, oh no, that's a good question. That's why I had to secretly type in his student number. So if you go to the registration checklist, this is all of the unfulfilled requirements for that student. And so it's kind of also another helpful way when you're doing an audit to make sure that they're fulfilling what they need. And if it's coming close to graduation time, then if there's something that's still missing, you can make sure you cover that with the student or that they have plans on taking that eventually. This is also beneficial for filling out the SAP paperwork. Are all of you familiar with the SAP paperwork? No? Yeah. No? Is that a no or a yes? Okay. Program coordinators will be doing it, right? Or no? Advisors? Okay, so yes. So either program coordinators or advisors will be filling out SAP or SAP is what it stands for, is Satisfactory Academic Progress. And the new federal guidelines for financial aid require that students are, if you are of satisfactory academic progress, you are completing more than 67% or have above a 2.0 GPA. So if they are not, they will be required to do some additional paperwork, and the students are being notified by this by financial aid, and then will come to you saying, I need you to help me fill out this paperwork. So, and some of the parts that are required for that is their degree progression and the classes they still need to take, and if they're going to be able to get above that, those requirements before they graduate. So this is a helpful view of information that you can use to fill that form out. One other feature about this is the GPA calculator. Has anyone used the GPA calculators yet? This is very nice. And so, for example, there's different ones. This says graduation calculator, term calculator, and vice. So for graduation calculator, if your student's a couple terms out and they want to see if they can get honors distinction, I'm going to change her GPA here to, let's say she's got a 3.75 and she wants to get, well, no, that's still honors, isn't it? Let's say she has a 3.45 and she has 50 credits remaining and there's 120 credits required for her degree. She wants to get a 3.5 so that she can get honors. It'll tell the student that she needs to average 3.57 over her final 50 credits to graduate with her desired GPA. So it's that one's a nice calculator. The term calculator is nice for some of those students when they're coming in after midterms and they're kind of worried about getting on academic probation or warning. You can go through and select the classes. Now, right now, because the summer schedule's out, it's showing her summer classes as well. You can just highlight over it and delete it, and it doesn't do anything, so that it won't be factored into the GPA. And then this is also for if students are saying, well, what if I withdraw from a class? How's that going to affect my GPA? Unfortunately, through the drop down, there's all these choices, and then you see there's WF twice and an AWF. None of these equate to a withdrawal, so what you'll need to do is actually just, again, delete the class from that, because we all know that a W doesn't get factored into your GPA, and then you can select, whatever the student's saying that they might get, and hit calculate, and it would tell her if she got these grades, she'd get a 3.78 for the term, instead of using any other paper calculation or other online tool. It's just right here, and it lists the class for them, and then you can print it out. And then the last calculator is the advice calculator. This is similar to the graduation calculator, but this is going to tell them a more specific breakdown of how many classes they need to take in order to achieve that desired GPA. So again, let's say she has a 3.45, she's earned 57. She really wants a 3.75. If we hit calculate, she'd need 68 credits at a 4.0 in order to get that GPA. So slightly unachievable, but let's say it was something more like a 3.55. Then it breaks it down, by different types, so then they can see that she needs 12 credits at 4 point and 37 at the 3.7. So.
Okay, so we're just going to talk just really briefly about transfer, mainly because it does have a lot to do with graduation requirements. And our friend macro, because we love it. Now, graduate, not so much, but for the undergraduate, it definitely does play a role, especially when it comes to our general education. And it only impacts gen ed. It doesn't impact anything else. It impacts general education, and it impacts your bachelor degrees. It doesn't impact associate degrees, but it impacts bachelors. Okay, those are the two key things. It doesn't impact your math, and it doesn't impact your higher level English courses. Other than that, it takes care of everything else, depending on the program and the program requirements. But when we start looking at the scientific understanding, we start looking at the culturals, and we start looking at the socials, and we start looking at the race, ethnicity, and gender, and the lower level communication competencies, macro takes care of it. All right, regardless of what the student's grade happens to be, if they have that macro stamp. If they don't have that macro stamp, they're held to the same transfer rule that any other student happens to be held to. And what is that transfer rule? Pardon? Yeah, they have to have that C or higher. All right, if they don't have that C or higher, they don't get the course. But if they have macro, they have the course. So macro applied only to our courses, our general education. And sometimes people get a little bit confused, and they'll call up and they say, well, can I apply it to our program requirements? No, you cannot. All right, as much as you might want to, even though it's coming in for general education, it is not coming in, and you can't use it for program requirements unless you have had some kind of special dispensation from the provost's office. And that is a discussion that you may have with the provost's office. But for everybody else, it's only general education. So when you're looking for the macro stamp, and I'll admit, when I first started doing graduation audits, I was looking for a macro stamp, by gosh. And where it is it's this little teeny tiny line at the very top of the unofficial transcripts, and it just says macro. It was so anticlimactic, I was sad. And so you have to look very, very carefully for it. And so once you see it, it's done. And so, Barb, back to you. That was like my little commercial break. Okay, go Barb, go. With excitement and enthusiasm. Mm-hmm. One of these days, I'm just going to get you so you're just so eager to come speak with me.
Okay. I wanted to show an example of a student, and this is maybe more just transfer credit rather than macro. And what we're going to look at first is the transfer credit articulation view here in Self-Serve Banner. Unlike the transcript view, this screen, and I don't know if you're familiar with it, but it will show the transferring course plus the Ferris equivalent. A couple little kind of nuances we have to look for. For example, this student took an English class at Washtenaw for 4 credits. Well, the Ferris equivalent is English 150 for 3 credits, so they break it down here, and you have this extra credit out there. Kind of, it can be used, I don't know, as a general requirement or wherever it might fit. But over here, it kind of looks confusing because the 4 credits that the student took one time is showing up twice. Just a few things to look out for, because this can get a little confusing. Now, the Ferris transcript view will only show the Ferris equivalent again, so it won't get numbers adding in there that shouldn't be. And it doesn't add them in, it just presents them that way for why, I don't know. Down here, I wanted to show you another example. These two courses at this school, Lansing Community College, the student took Biology 203 and 204, which is a 3-credit and a 1-credit class, equivalent to our Biology 286 for 3 credits and then the additional credit again. So they're linked courses. This is just a group view showing in Banner. It's just kind of, just so you're aware of how these might look, and it looks funny, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. The other thing, and Anne Marie talked about, were the attributes for general education, and if the course does have the attribute, it will show here also, because, well, this is the Ferris class, but when you get into looking at the transfer equivalency page, a student, the gen ed attributes will be out there if they are assigned one. So the course might be kind of vague, like ANTH 1-S, so it's an anthropology 100 level, but it is a social awareness attribute, so that will count for gen ed and the social awareness. The other thing about macro that maybe we didn't talk so much about is prerequisites. If, for example, the student has the macro stamp and their English 250 equivalent is a D, well, that wouldn't work either, would it? Because we wouldn't have accepted the grade.
Right.
But you might have a macro stamp and the student doesn't have the prerequisite grade for the next level. And macro does not cover that. So that's just another little nuancy thing. Extender is, or
Well,
did you want?
sometimes with the attributes, you want to show them the transfer equivalency page. Sometimes with the attributes, one of the things that I have found.
Where?
One of the things that I have found when
I'm sorry.
students,
Sorry.
when faculty members have turned in their graduation applications, and they, when a class looks like it should have gen ed, and it's not showing up on the transfer equivalency page as a general education, sometimes what I'll do to double check is I'll go to the transfer equivalency page, because sometimes it's out here, but it hasn't, for whatever reason, been inputted into our Banner system. And so if you ever want to do a cross check, you can go out and you can look to see whether or not it has the equivalency here. You know, that's always just a nice way to do it. It's just a little kind of extra step. And you can access that, because they've changed the website, you can access that through the main page. It'll say transfer students at the very top. Right.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
At the very top, because the way I used to go to it is no longer the way you get to it.
Right here.
Yeah, it says transfer students at the very top. You click on the transfer students. And I always use counselor and advisor. And then transfer equivalencies. Though they're in the process of cleaning this up, so it may not be that in a couple months. So,
And, excuse me, speaking of cleanup, the College of Arts and Sciences is working on cleaning up all the courses out there that are just kind of, we question and they were evaluated in the past and we didn't have these general education attribute codes to assign to them and everything. So we are working on it. As we change them and as they are entered in Banner by the records office or the transfer office, it is live, so it's not like there's a big lag of them not showing. Oh, extender, okay. Where do I want to go? Right here? Okay. Okay, thank you. All right. We're back on our student. I had an advisor call me the other day and say, boy, I had really had to put on my detective hat to help the student, and this is what I did. And they went into Extender and looked at these transcripts. The student was saying that they had submitted their transcript a long time ago and it wasn't showing up. Well, the advisor did have enough savvy to go out here and look and prove the student, I don't remember which way it was, right or wrong, but anyway, I don't know if you're familiar with this so much, but just for example, their indexing system is kind of challenging too at times. But if a student has multiple transcripts from the same institution, I don't know if you all know this, but they're kind of stacked in there. So you have to look at every page. This wasn't a good example. But if there are other multiple pages, there could be another transcript behind, like a newer transcript. The older ones are coming first. And this is going to be the back. So I guess this wasn't a good example of that, but just so you know, this was something I had to learn a long time ago.
Right, so if you want to look and you want to see what does the transcript look like, because you're double checking something, doing that fact checking, then Extender is your friend. So we're going to wrap up. I know, yay! And one of the things, the final thing that we're handing out to you, and I know that this is kind of like your little preview for March, but it also goes along with your graduation requirements. And part of that is developing appropriate academic planning from the very beginning. I mean, if you want your student to get out of here in 4 years, not that we want them to get out of here, if you want them to graduate in 4 years or 2 years, depending on the program, you need to start that planning from the very beginning. How do you successfully help that student be able to graduate when we need that student to graduate? Now, a lot of it is that the student has to take the 15 to 17 hours. Many of our students have a difficult time with that, mainly because they don't take advantage of a lot of the resources that we have available. And sometimes it's because our advisors aren't quite sure how to help them take advantage of those particular resources. So what I've done is I've adapted a lot of different things, and I've made it pertinent to our institution in terms of how can you best help those students here at Ferris State University. And what do you do the first 2 years? How do you help them in terms of having that conversation? Well, to a certain extent. But what are those things that you should be doing year 1 and 2? What are those things that you should be doing year 3? What are those things you should be doing year 4? I'm also working on a document for our students that will be that corollary that goes along with it, because we don't want to put the burden just on the faculty member. But part of it is, you know, sometimes we're just not quite sure what should be happening during those first 2 years. You know, how do we work with that student? What's going to be the best thing that we should be doing as we go along with it? Thank you so much. Hopefully we've answered some of your questions that you had. Our phone numbers are at the bottom, though Amy told me I wrote her wrong phone number. Shame on me. I'd hate for you not to be able to get a hold of her. It's 3661? Yes. 3661, not 3771. You call that number and you're going to get hold of Jane Pohl. And so if you have any further questions, please don't hesitate to get a hold of us. We really do want to help you because we do like advising.